I will. Hello and welcome to a rainy Monday. Luckily, we are meeting virtually for a demonstration of two databases that can help you find grants and prospects for potential grants. Those databases are Foundation Directory Online and Grants.Gov. Thank you so much for joining live. My name is Hadiza Saadu. I am the Kansas City Public Library Small Business and Nonprofit Specialist. Not to put you on the spot, Jorge, but I'd love to know if you would like to share in the chat. Are you already part of a nonprofit organization? And if so, have you ever searched for grants? Is this your first time exploring grants? If you'd like to share just a little bit of background as I pull up the slides and learning objectives. Well, you can feel free to share that at any time during this presentation. And if you'd like to ask any questions, feel free to put those in the chat as well. So for the purpose of our time today, I've identified 4 different learning outcomes. That you have placed something in the chat, I'll talk about the learning outcomes and then come back. So the first learning outcome is that by the end of our time today, you should be able to identify your own organization's needs before conducting a search for grant funding. And then once you do conduct a search, you should be able to evaluate if the prospects that you do find are a good fit. And then, of course, by the end of our time together, you will know how to access and use the Foundation Directory Online, as well as how to use and access Grants.Gov. Pull up that. Okay, no problem, Jorge. We will keep it moving. Okay, so before we even start the search, whether it's in the Foundation Directory Online or in Grants.Gov, there are 3 questions that you need to be really clear on. And the clearer you are on the answers to these 3 questions, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to start a search and then refine the search as you continue. So the first question is, who are you serving? Specifically, what groups have you identified, a specific demographic, people with specific needs? If you can be as detailed as possible within this answer, that will serve you well, because the more ways in which you can define who you are serving, the more ways in which you can essentially look for those prospects who would be serving the same population as you. Second question, where are the folks that you are serving located? So this is related to the majority of your nonprofit activities, or what you intend to do as a nonprofit if you're not already off the ground and running. Where they're located is going to be important, because being able to identify those key prospects that are in your vicinity, in your state, in your city, is going to allow you to essentially knock on a door and establish a conversation in the very likely chance that you find a perfect fit, but they don't have anything available that you can find online. Last but not least, this is very important. You want to ask yourself, as an organization, what are you doing for the identified population that you're serving? This is going to help you really define what your project is. So if you already are very clear on what your organization is trying to fund as far as a project, this should be a fairly straightforward question. But if this is not a question that you have necessarily spent that much time on because you've been getting everything in place or more in the early stages of getting your nonprofit off the ground as far as implementing your services, this is where you definitely want to spend a lot of time to make sure you're very clear and focused on what it is exactly that you're doing for them. Right. So I see that we have a message in the chat. Okay. So Jorge has shared that he is part of the Westside Community Spanish community, and they're doing a community policing program, and which includes education and prevention. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you'd like, I would love to tailor the live search to the specific goals that you have as an organization. And feel free to take your time with this question, but I'd love to know, does your organization already have nonprofit status? Is it in the 501c3? How long have you been in operation? I'd love to know those details if you would like to share, but no pressure. All right. Okay. So again, we're still not in any of the databases, but I've got another list of questions for you to think about and keep in the back of your mind as we take the search in the Foundation Directory Online. Once we actually put in the parameters and sift through the results and look through a specific candidate's profile as far as a candidate to be a potential prospect, there are 5 questions that are important to ask yourself as an organization to really determine if it makes sense to spend more time trying to either establish a relationship or go after any open grant opportunities or RFPs. So the first question, which is probably the most important, you want to make sure that you meet the funder's requirements. So one thing that we'll see when we do a live search in the Foundation Directory Online, as well as in Grants.Gov, is that any grant maker is going to list any criteria that they have that will make you ineligible to actually apply for any open grant opportunities. So that's the first thing that you want to check for, because at the end of the day, if you establish that a prospect's mission is in alignment with yours, they serve a similar population as you're serving, but you neglected to make sure that you meet all of the eligibility requirements, you may just have wasted your time because you may have gone ahead and started an entire you may have started an entire process of applying for a grant, and then you find out that you don't even live in the location that potential grant maker actually serves. So it's important to make sure that this is, as far as eligibility goes, it's important to establish that you are actually eligible before spending the time and energy. So after you've actually determined that you are indeed eligible, the second thing that you want to ask yourself is your mission or your project goal a priority for this funder? And we're going to see in Foundation Directory Online, particularly, that you can get a lot of insight as to what a potential funder is interested in based off of their patterns of giving from the past, from the recent past, as well as the scope of the different subject areas that they focus on. Third, you want to ask yourself, how big are the grants that this potential grant maker that I have established matches a similar goal or mission that I have established for my organization? How big are the grants that they have given in the past? This is going to be important to think about as far as your budget goes. So this is where you want to have a very clear idea about what your budget is. Second off, you want to ask yourself, does this funder support organizations that are similar to mine. And this is going to be a great question to find the answers to in Foundation Directory Online, because one great thing about it is that you can see the exact recipients of grants that funders have given in the past. And then you can go ahead and look those organizations up to see what they're all about and see, does this organization fit more or less, or does it do something similar to what I'm doing? Are they serving a similar population as me? What are the differences that I can find between this organization and mine? Are they that significant? And if you determine that organizations in the past that have successfully received funding from the identified funder are similar to yours, then you're probably good to go. As far as then taking the next step, which will be served by this last question, do I know anybody associated with this funder? So one of the things that we're going to find in Foundation Directory Online, and I'm just going to warn you if you've never used it before, you're probably not going to find any open RFPs. So I want to just set those expectations. But what you will find more often than not is in a funder's profile, you're going to get to see kind of an organizational chart, who are the decision makers, and then if you do have a LinkedIn profile, you can go ahead and cross-reference those names within LinkedIn, and then use the contact information that you can access through Foundation Directory Online or their website to go ahead and make a cold introduction based off of the information that you've already gathered. All right. So quite a mouthful.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I was having some problem with my microphone.
That
so
is not a problem.
With this storm, something is happening with our system. So, but thank you so much. I'm hearing all your conversations. So I hope we can interact more now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jorge, for being here. And please, no worries about any tech issues. I'm also having those. I'm joined. I've joined with my audio by phone because my microphone is also causing problems. So I absolutely understand. Okay. So I'll close the chat. Okay, so you're a non-for-profit and 29 years of service. Okay, so you're very, very, very familiar with this world. So if you have any insights that you'd like to share from anything that you've learned in the years, feel free to share. And then, of course, I thought there was another person on, but I understand he's joined by phone. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this PowerPoint now and get us into the Foundation Directory Online. Let's share. Well, actually, before I do that, I do have one more slide, just as like basic information about Foundation Directory Online for those who are curious. Let me go ahead and share that again. Okay, so what is the Foundation Directory Online exactly? It is a database. This will pop up. Thank you. Foundation Directory Online is arguably the most comprehensive database for accessing information about funders. So what is included inside Foundation Directory Online? You've got access to over 140,000 funders, as well as their corresponding over 1 million recipients and the grants that those recipients have received. So you get detailed profiles of these funders that we will see shortly, as well as the grants they've given, those who received those grants, and any companies that are affiliated. And they update this daily. So they keep this very current. And as far as access, this tool is only available at the Central Library. So you can make a trip to the Central Library with your own laptop and use the library Wi-Fi to access the Foundation Directory Online through the digital catalog, or you can just use any of the computers that are at the central library.
Okay, so
Okay.
basically, sorry to interrupt you. So we do not need to pay the membership or something to have access to that data. Is basically go to the library, the central library, or
Absolutely.
is any other or the libraries like the Irene library that we have here, the west side, or is only the central library?
Only the central library.
Got it. Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. Yes, that is a important distinction to make. The Foundation Directory Online is only available at the central library downtown. So it's not any branch, it's just the central branch downtown. Okay, so as far as the data sources, a lot of people tend to be curious about where does Foundation Directory Online actually get all of its information from. And if you have spent time either with Foundation Directory Online and on your own accord and have used Grants.Gov, you can see that there's some overlap sometimes between what you see on Grants.Gov and on Foundation Directory Online as far as the federally based grants. So that is one source that Foundation Directory Online does pull from. And in addition to that, they are pulling directly from grant maker websites and of course some of their annual reports. They're also accessing published application guidelines and philanthropic press. And of course, as I mentioned before, federal government grants that are available publicly through Grants.gov, as well as other information sources that have been established through just their staying power within the nonprofit world, and within that, direct reporting from grant makers based off of those relationships. So the biggest thing that Foundation Directory Online offers to you that's different from what you may have used in the past, which might just be Google or Grants.gov or any other number of sources, is that they do have that direct reporting, and so they have those established relationships with grant makers, so they can get some somewhat proprietary information. I'm not going to say that it's totally, proprietary, but they have that angle, which is why they make access limited when they work with libraries. But it is available to you. You do not have to go and get a membership. Just make a trip to the library and you will be golden.
This is great. This is really great. That's something that we face sometimes as a nonprofit organization. We don't have that funding extra to pay for a membership to be able to ask for it. And I'm being navigating on the website to find avenues, to find extra additional resources and grants to apply. But most of the time requires your membership. So when it's even like federal funding requires that. So I really appreciate the libraries open this opportunity for nonprofit organization. Well, anyone. So thank you so much. I'm going to visit more often the library now.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate that feedback. And I should also just mention now, I do meet with people one-on-one. So if you need help, I'm absolutely available for that. And I'll share the information on how you can schedule a meeting. But since you already RSVP'd to this, everybody that RSVP'd, there were actually several people that signed up for this. Everybody's going to get a follow-up email that will include my information on how to schedule a meeting if you want one-on-one hands-on help. So this is the part of the presentation.
That will be terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where I'm going to end the PowerPoint presentation and finally get us into the Foundation Directory Online, what we've all been waiting for. Okay, so I'm going to just start from the beginning of how you would access this if you are already on the Kansas City Public Library homepage. So that's the first step, is to make sure that you are on the Kansas City Public Library homepage, the URL, kclibrary.org. Once you're here, you're going to go over to a section here in this white toolbar called Resources Research, and you're going to hover over it with your mouse. And once you do that, what we see here is this alphabetized list of resources, and we're going to go to the Foundation Directory Online, F. So we're going to scroll to that entry and click on More Info. And once we actually are at the entry to find a little bit more information about this tool, we can click on this link here once we're at the library downtown. Access Foundation Directory Online Professional. So for anybody that may be watching the playback, some of you may have access to Foundation Directory Online with your nonprofit because you have a membership, and your membership may be more of a limited access membership. Difference between what you have access to if yours is a limited membership is that at the Central Library, what you will see is the free version or the professional version, which is going to give you all of the information. Okay, so when we are in the homepage of Foundation Directory Online, there are things we see that are important underneath this grand quote, win more grants and make a bigger difference, find the right funders now. It is search bar. And so there are two different ways you can approach a search. You can start with a phrase that matches something similar to what you see grayed out in the search bar here, where we see ballet school in New York City, animal shelter in Portland, Maine, and food pantry in Dallas. You can start that way and see what you get, or you can just start with the advanced search and filters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this chat again and take a couple of the, okay, so we've got the website, Spanish-speaking community, and the focus is on community policing with education and prevention. What I'm going to do is just start with the search that says community policing in Kansas City. Now, before I continue, I am a little bit wary about what the search might yield because it already feels very specific. But you never know. Let's see what we find. Okay, so when we did this search by using a phrase, using keywords, community policing and Kansas City, Foundation Directory Online added a few other terms that it thought we meant. So they said police agencies and economic development. I'm not sure if police agencies is really what we're going for here, but economic development might make more sense. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the advanced search and filters, and this is going to demonstrate basically how to conduct a search without using a key phrase. Right now, we are using a key phrase, so you'll see how it works. But you definitely want to take advantage of the advanced search and filters early on in your search because it can really help you refine what you're looking for and help basically, if you have certain terms in mind that don't quite fit what Candid or Foundation Directory Online has in its own backend, this is a way for you to get familiar with some of the terms that they have to help maximize your search. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this advanced search and filters and just see what we have. Okay, so what we can see here is that in the subject area, just like it shows up here, we've got some corresponding search terms that show up as the specific subject areas that correspond in the Foundation Directory Online. So they identified police agencies and economic development. I'm going to go ahead and just take off police agencies just because we're not really trying to fund the police agencies themselves. The focus is on community policing. Let me look at this chat. And just to let you know, Jorge, that is not a problem there. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch playback. Hopefully that should be
Thank you so
available
much.
later.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm going to take off police agencies. I'm going to include economic development. I'm going to also click in the actual box to see what all of the subject areas Foundation Directory Online has identified. So we can kind of go on a little bit of a rabbit chase here, but what I'm interested in is looking at the community and economic development section here. And we see that we have a drop-down option, so we can see the more specific subjects within the broader subject. So we've got economic development, which Foundation Directory Online identified, and it gets even more specific than that. We've got employment, rural development, urban development. So what we see here is maybe these terms don't really fit because the point is to focus on community policing with an education angle. And what was the other term? Well, it's prevention, which can include, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. This is great, because one of the subjects is community policing. I was just trying to give you some info while I was able to connect with my microphone. But yeah, you just showed there like agriculture. We have a community orchard here that we use as an education component for the community in general as well as schools. So when you click down the option there, I see agriculture. Say, oh, there is an option, so we can try to find some grants, some funding for this education component that we have with the orchard. And also we have some families that they don't have access, like let's say for education, like diabetes or hearing problems or dental care, things like that, that we can start looking on it. This is an amazing options to start looking for opportunities to continue writing these grants. So thank you so much for showing us that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to keep it pretty broad. I'm just going to keep economic development here. I just am interested to see what they have as far as community improvements, beautification, community organizing. Maybe this would apply. Seems like community organizing definitely makes sense for what you're doing. So I'm not going to try to bog down the search terms with the subject area here. I'm just going to keep it as that, economic development and community organizing. Economic development can be a pretty broadly defined term, but the way that they have defined it here is through employment. But education could also fall under that, and you can definitely make the case for it. So one thing I just want to emphasize here is that one way to view this search is a way if you have not, maybe you have a mission statement that you have been using and you're trying to update it, or in just the case of figuring out how to present yourself to a specific funder. Definitely, I would just kind of try to emphasize, keep your mind open to other ways of communicating what you do or different angles from which you can describe what you're doing. And this, I think, is a perfect example of how you can start to think that way. But that is not to say that you should change your core focus of what you're doing if you're finding that you're not getting that many results. It's just to say that if you're finding that there's terms that you haven't necessarily used before to describe your work that seem to apply, definitely keep those in mind and keep those in your back pocket. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a geographic focus for Kansas City. See what pops up. Okay, Kansas City, Missouri. and we have a Spanish-speaking population. But let's look at what the different groups that they have listed. We have ethnic and racial groups here. So we could say people of Latin American descent. I'll just make this broad. One thing to note about the population served category here is when I'm working with people, I rarely specify it just because it tends to make the search results too narrow. So just know that even though you are always identifying a specific population that you're serving, just because a grant maker doesn't identify that specific population as a group that they serve does not mean that they are not a good fit as far as what the actual activities are. But let's just see what we can get in this search results. We'll connect this search with explain how to read them. Okay, so now what we've gotten here are results for community organizing, economic development, Kansas City, Missouri, and people of Latin American descent. And we have specified a broad range on a grant amount from 0, and I think this is 10 million, yes, between 2003 to 2023. And we see that we have in this list a total of 10 grant makers with 40 grants and 5 recipients. So given the number of results, this is a very manageable list, but it does span 20 years. I'm going to keep that time frame broad just to scroll through and see what specific results we have. I should also identify the broad scope of our search results. We've got 10 grant makers, again, with 40 grants, 5 recipients, and then 986 tax forms that if you really want to, you can go through and look at those minute details. But you can definitely get the main information that you need just by accessing the profiles. Okay, so total amount of giving that the organizations that meet this search query, the total value is a little under $4 million as far as all of the grants they've given combined that match these criteria. And in these 10 grant makers, first one that comes up is the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. I figured we would see them. They are a pretty big donor here in town. So when we're looking just at the kind of like summary information before we actually get in more detail, we see that they're based in Kansas City. The total assets that they have is, what, $5 billion? I can't tell. $5 million? I'm not great with this. Reading these numbers just like quickly. I just know this is pretty large. But, you know, we've got assets here, but assets don't mean much if they're not giving that much related to those assets. So we really want to look at if those numbers exist, the total amount of giving they've done based off of the search and the amount that they've funded, and then the total amount of grants.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, it's just great to see all of this information. This is great.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to just go ahead and click on the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation and see what we get here just because they've got a lot of assets here. So, what do we have? Not only are we accessing the first search results from our search query, but we're giving an example of what you will have access to whenever you click on a funder profile in the Foundation Directory Online. So first thing, you're going to get their name, of course, and then a link to their website and their LinkedIn. And if you want to if you already know this organization and you basically went into Foundation Directory Online and you wanted to find this specific organization and find more information about them, and you already know that they're a great fit, you could just immediately go to the who's who, which we will look at in a second, and find contact info to reach out and get connected. So if that's not the case, you're trying to assess if this is a good fit. This first section, the 5 years at a glance section, is a very, very great way to determine if it makes sense to keep evaluating this profile, even before you see what their specific eligibility requirements are. So based off of whatever your organization is doing, you want to make sure that what you're doing aligns, at least monetarily, with what the organization is doing. So what we see here from left to right are the subject areas that the funder is prioritizing in the past 5 years, where the money is going relative based off of a heat map, where the darker colors indicate that more money is going to that specific state. And then you also want to determine, especially if you've already figured out your budget, how big is a grant from this organization? What can I potentially expect based off of their previous patterns of giving? So what we can see here in this specific case is in terms of what subject area they're prioritizing, we've got a top 10 list here with arts and culture leading the way. But then we've also got education, health, human services, philanthropy, environment, public safety. Let's go ahead and click on public safety. As you can see, when I hover over this, the total amount of giving to that subject area appears. And so even though it's not in the top 3, it is in the top 10, and we do see that they've given quite a bit to this specific subject in the past 5 years. So, this is something that we're focused on here. And when I click on any of those blue bars, and I get a horizontal version of this, and then I can filter by specific subject. So what I'm going to do, again, is I'm going to identify public safety as the subject. And what we're going to see here is we get this even broken down into more specific categories. So this is corresponding to those search terms that we were looking through, and how they get more and more specific as you go through the drop down. So as far as how is this even breaking down? We've got consumer protection, abuse prevention, corrections and penology, court crime prevention. That was something you identified was prevention. So this is a specific term you can jot down that is something that they're familiar with, obviously, that they've supported. Disasters and emergency management, fire prevention and control, legal services, nothing for public safety, and then safety education, which also corresponds to what you want to do. So let's click on crime prevention. And so they have given a total of $1 million, almost $2 million, to 30 different recipients, totaling 41 grants. Then they've also focused on law enforcement. Not exact, this is definitely not what you're focused on. You're focused on community policing. So this could be maybe a fit, but you might have to finagle your language a little bit as far as what you're going for.
This is great information. It's just fantastic to see all of these resources available there. So I think I'm missing the option to engage with these agencies. So this is great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is the subject. This is just the subject area. You can also expand the filters if you want to see it from a longer timeline, but I don't think that's necessarily the most useful thing. Just usually that's for if you're curious. A lot of people are curious, and that is one great aspect about this tool. But if you're just curious, like about a specific organization, that gives in your community and you want to know who are they actually giving money to, like this is a definite tool to use to access that information. So we get a similar situation where with this heat map, where's the money going? We can click on a state and get more detailed information about that state. We click specifically on Missouri, we can look at the county breakdown of funding, and we get the actual numbers within that, which is really great. And then turning to at a glance, honestly, I feel at a glance within each of the profiles tends to be what takes the most time because you can get so specific. Similar situation with the grants, you can get detailed with this. Oh, what it does is it just shows who are the recipients of the grants that have been given. And we see here Hispanic Economic Development Corporation. The word Hispanic means that there's a similar population being targeted, but could be very different activities that are happening. Add to the profile. Now that we have looked at a glance, we can see the actual recipients of grants that have been given out in the past and what the focus areas are. Something you can definitely spend a lot of time combing through. We can get more information about their funding interests. It corresponds exactly to the way that the search works. So we get even beyond just the top 10. We get more detailed, as well as the geographic areas that they support, and then the specific population groups. So they've more broadly defined their population groups, or at least defined their population groups by age and economic status. And then important things to know about the organization. What are the different types of ways you can get funding? So they do support strategies where they support capital and infrastructure capital campaigns, continuing support, curriculum development, and emergency funds. So beyond that, they've got endowments, general support, and the list goes on. So they have a pretty broad base of support strategies that they can provide. So it really just depends on what you have defined. Is it that you're trying to get, since you've been 29 years in operation, it's probably just program support at this point. But in some other cases, people are just getting off the ground. They just got their 501c3 status and they need capital investment or capital support, not investment. Let me not use the wrong terms here because you're not paying back a grant. That is the biggest reason why people search for grants is that they're not loans and they're not investments. They are investments somewhat, but it's kind of murky territory to start using that language as far as what the funding organizations are doing. Yes, they're investing in your organization, but they don't own it. There are typically expectations as far as reporting back on any grants that you do receive from an organization, but it's a grant. Okay, so what are the transaction types of this organization? Cash grants, employee matching gifts, matching grants, and program-related investments, PRIs. That's a term that you're familiar with. And so who are the actual organizations that they support? Agency endowment funds, designated funds, donor advised funds, federated funds, field of interest funds, scholarships, restricted funds, unrestricted funds. So it seems like they're very broad here. Additional things to search for here. We've got related organizations. This is really useful as far as expanding your search. You can go back to the search results and keep looking through those results. And you can use the related organizations to help expand your search just because they've identified organizations that have similar patterns of subject areas that they focus on, as well as patterns of giving. So in these, I misspoke. That is other funders to consider. In this case, related organizations is what they're actually, the organizations that are actually professionally or legally or both. So in these in this situation, we've got a list that are geographic affiliates, and then organizations that support this organization. As you can see, there's a lot of support for this organization, which makes sense because it's so big. They have so many assets. Okay, then we definitely want to take a look at the about to make sure that our mission is aligned with their mission, at least in a vague way. So the first, what they're saying here is their mission is to improve the quality of life in Greater Kansas City by increasing charitable giving, educating, and connecting donors to community needs they care about, and leading on critical community issues. So I actually really love that mission statement because it just means that, like, if you have a very well-defined community-based project that you're passionate about, which is obvious for what you're doing, Jorge, this is definitely something you can make the case for, literally using their language. We want to help you, let me not throw out the terms necessarily, but education, this is something where you would want to highlight that as far as an alignment. And then when we're talking about critical community issues, community policing is obviously something you've identified as a solution to a critical community issue, which is safety. And this is where you can just start to think about expanding on what that problem is and how it affects you and your community and why you're involved, and why you need this funding to try something different. And this is where you also know now, based off of their patterns of giving from the subject area that we looked at, which is public safety. Well, they didn't give anything to public safety, but we saw that they specifically have supported law enforcement initiatives, as well as, I can't remember what the other one was, but so we know that they have supported law enforcement in the past. So that's just something for you to know in the back of your mind, not necessarily something to communicate, but just to know as far as presenting yourself as a new opportunity to support something that's very critical and to support an organization that is enmeshed within the community. Okay, so we've looked at the about. Now we can look more about their backgrounds as well as the different program areas. They've got quite a bit going on in here, so definitely something to read up on. Other funders to consider. So in this case, this is where Foundation Director Online will have identified other funders based off of patterns of giving, subject area, geographic area, and the amount. But they did not identify any in this case. So we will go next to the application/RFPs. In this tool, like I said at the beginning, majority of the case, you're not going to find an actual RFP on the site, but they will usually have access to maybe a portal that they have on their website, but at the very least, they're going to provide some background information on how you can at least find out more. So they'll put the information about when they are meeting, the board is meeting, and any deadlines that they have. So they have not specified any ineligibility or eligibility requirements here, but this is where you definitely want to go to the website because I'm betting that all that information is. Okay, financials. This is where we've got a snapshot of their total assets compared to giving. And this is for just last year. As I mentioned earlier, this is updated daily, so they're probably going to update the total giving. And if you want to look through the 990 funds, you absolutely can. But we won't do that. Who's who? So this is important to take advantage of when you go to the website and you don't see any open RFPs, or you do see an open RFP and you have a question, or you want to introduce yourself to somebody that can help you get connected to somebody who can maybe help expedite the process, because the more that you are in contact with a funder, the more you're strengthening the relationship because you've identified that you are a good fit. And so if you're kind of shy to that kind of thing, like cold introductions, just understand that at this point, you're only taking this step because you've identified that this is a prospect that actually makes sense to pursue, because that is what you're going to focus on as far as the messaging. And that's something I can definitely help with as far as just thinking through on how to just approach that. I don't, for myself, have that type of experience, but I can definitely help you identify if you're stuck. How can I actually make sure that what I'm communicating about my organization aligns with what their mission is? I know that it aligns, but how do I make sure that it actually matches with their language? So this is definitely a very useful information to take advantage of to try to establish relationships. And as you can see, they've got quite an extensive organizational chart here. Communications is really anything that's in the news that's about the organization. So this can also help you if you're trying to do an introduction, finding out information about what they've been doing in the news that is relevant. It can be a good lead on. And then last but not least, contact information for how to get access to grant cycle information or open RFPs. And they will usually give a name and a title, as well as a phone number, and then an email, as well as the website. So I know we've got about 5 minutes left. We did get started a little bit late. I'm going to go ahead and switch now to Grants.Gov and just kind of give a basic overview of how to even really just read Grants.Gov. One thing I want to mention with Grants.Gov is it is federal grants, and a lot of the time they're very, very specific. So if you are watching playback and you are a researcher in healthcare or technology, this can be a good resource. But every now and then they're going to have federally based grants that are hyper-specific, but for some reason relevant to a specific person's needs. So I just want to introduce Grants.Gov because it's another tool that's out there. It's free. All you have to do is just make an account, and then the more you use it, the more you understand how it works. So if you don't know what's out there, you don't know what's out there. It's another thing to take advantage of in the chance that you don't really find anything in Foundation Directory Online, or you just want to expand the sources that you're using. So I'm on the Grants.Gov search page. I'm going to actually go back to the home page. That way we can get situated with what this actually looks like here. Okay, so as we can see, they're having some technical difficulties here, like many of us. So when we get to the home page, we can see this menu bar here of different things you can do. We've got Learn Grants. This is a very good resource to get familiar with if you're not that familiar with what's going on federally as far as searching for grants. But I absolutely recommend taking advantage of this learning center. But what we're going to do, I'm going to go straight to the search bar to show you how to conduct a search in Grants.Gov. So, similar to Foundation Directory Online, there are 2 ways you can do a search here. You can start with, well, actually, there's more than 2 ways here. But you can do a keyword search like you can in Foundation Directory Online, or you can just kind of browse and use the filters as you see fit. And it might make sense to do that in this case because the categories are pretty specific here. So I'm not going to do a keyword just because I want to see what's in here. If it makes sense to even really spend my time here, like what is the broad scope of things that I'm seeing. So one of the most important filters to be aware of in Grants.Gov are the opportunity status filters here. So it defaults to the ones that make logical sense for when you're actually searching for grants. So the vast majority of people that are taking the time to go and look for grants are looking for something they can actually apply for. They're not really looking for something that was posted in the past, unless they're trying to do some kind of reporting. That's a different situation. For the people that are actually looking for funding, this defaults to forecasted opportunities as well as posted opportunities. Posted opportunities just means that That opportunity is currently available for applicants to submit an application to. Forecasted means that the announcement about the application process is publicly available, but the application is not yet open. So it's just for you to put that on your calendar and come back to it later. Also important are the funding instrument types. So in this case, what they've got here are the cooperative agreements, as well as grants, other, and procurement contracts. So this could be a great way if you offer some kind of service that could be something that allows you to work with the government. This could be a way for you to look for procurement contracts with the government, but we're not focused on that today. It's just to let you know that's there. What we're focused on right now is a grant. We're not really interested in other funding or revenue generation opportunities right now. We just want a grant. So now what I've done is I have narrowed down what is available to access in this database, Grants.Gov, to the posted and forecasted opportunities that are grant only. And I have not specified any kind of category or population or anything like that. It's just what this Grants.Gov has. Okay, next is we've got
some of those grants are for the state, or these are like a national states or international grants.
Really just depends on it depends on the opportunity. Most of them are national, some of them are international, but because they're all federal, they're all based off of a federal agency. So with this eligibility section here, this is about what you are. Like, are you representing a city or a township? Are you representing a county government? Or are you representing a for-profit organization other than a small business? So there are some very niche grants that are available to for-profit organizations that are related to technology and healthcare usually. But we've also got independent school districts, individuals, Native American tribal governments, and then, of course, what we're interested in is nonprofits that have a 501c3 status. So that's what we're going to click on. And now we have narrowed the search even more. Again, we don't have a specific category as what is actually being posted, just what is the broad base of federal grants that are for 501c3 nonprofit organizations that are currently available. Okay. So then we've got a category and agency filters that we can look at, and we can see the corresponding numbers, which we have been able to see all throughout. But this is where we can see if it makes sense to try to filter things even more. Well, what we see here under categories, we've got 14 results in agriculture that meet the rest of the criteria, and then 12 in arts, 4 in business and commerce. Then we've got community development, consumer protection, education, 321. So let's go ahead and click on that. And then maybe also employment, labor, and training. And then, let's see. Potentially law, justice, and legal services, but that might not really be relevant. So let's just click on it anyway and see what we can find. That's disaster prevention. Okay, well, let's look at what we've got so far. I also want to mention these agencies. So if we wanted to just see what's available within each federal agency, we could continue to refine the search this way. I don't typically do this when I'm using the Grants.Gov database. But let's just go ahead. Now that we've narrowed down the search results somewhat, or definitely a lot comparatively to what we had. Now we have 342 results. A lot of these are not going to be relevant. And so I will say there's not the best way to kind of go through the results themselves other than to really just read the opportunity title. So there's a lot of things here that kind of make the eyes glaze over, including the opportunity number with all these letters and numbers. If you happen to have an opportunity number based off of learned about an opportunity through somebody or they emailed it to you, you could search for a grant that way, but usually people don't have that. So don't worry about the opportunity number so much.
But Khadija, do these grants require like a letter of intent, or you just apply as opportunities come?
It really depends on what the actual opportunity is saying. So let's just look at some of these titles and see if they might make sense to look at further. The first one we have is I already know, I just saw papillomavirus. We're not doing it. So like I said before, healthcare research used to be some of the most common things that we find. We've got one here, Department of Labor Building Pathways to Infrastructure Jobs Grant Program. Let's see what that is. So look at the eligibility. First thing that we're looking at here. State governments, nonprofits with a 501c3 status, other than institutions of higher education, private institutions of higher education, others, they have another field that expands on that, city or township governments, county governments, nonprofits that don't have 501c3 status, public and state-controlled institutions of higher education, and the Native American tribal governments that are federally recognized. So what is this about? The purpose of the DOL Building Pathways to Infrastructure Jobs Grant Program is to fund public-private partnerships to develop, strengthen, and scale promising and evidence-based training models in H-1B industries and occupations critical to meeting the goals of the bipartisan infrastructure law and to maximize the impact of these investments. So there's a lot of information here that gets really specific here. Let's see. The U.S. will need a proficient workforce. Basically, this is a training program, as it said. So this could be something that makes sense if you want to include any kind of like worker training aspect into your programming. I will say that this is a great example that when you use Grants.Gov, every now and then, and by every now and then I'm going to say it's not rare, but you have to go and dig and you have to know how to filter to be able to even like find anything that's worth combing through. It can help, like, you will have a specific program in mind, but just know that all of the grants on Grants.Gov are for specific federal programs. So the government is trying to meet a goal, and in some cases, that goal is going to align with your mission. You can find the way to communicate that. So there's quite a lot here, but that's just a basic kind of overview of Grants.Gov and how you can use it to expand on your search. You can also send this to yourself once you create an account, which is something I definitely recommend doing by registering over on the top right hand corner. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint again. That way you can see how to get in touch with me. And in case you have any additional questions before I go ahead and end our time, please feel free to ask those now, and I'll try very hard to answer them. But I just want to thank you for joining me today on this live demonstration of Foundation Directory Online and Grants.Gov. I hope that it was informative. And if you want to follow up and schedule some time with me to go through Foundation Directory Online one-on-one for your specific case, you can absolutely do that. I have a scheduling link. It's with Calendly, and you have the option to schedule either a 30-minute or 60-minute meeting with me. It will pull up. Okay.
And
So yeah,
Yadisa, you are at the library, at Central Library every day, Monday to Friday. I understand we had to do an appointment, but you are most of the time at the library, right?
I'm here. It just depends on the day. Sometimes I'm remote. Today I am at the library since I have to use the Foundation Directory online. But this is, are you seeing my screen right now? I don't know if
Yes, I do.
not.
I do. Yeah, I was.
Okay. So, yeah, this is just how you would schedule out time with me. So, oftentimes I'm not by my desk or in a different area. So
Right.
hard to pin me down. So you just make sure that you know about this link to schedule a meeting, and then you can go ahead and do that, either 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And I'll just click on the 30-minute one, and it will ask you a few questions. It will give you my calendar and my availability. And Tuesday, if you wanted to schedule 1:30, you would then confirm it, and that's where you put your name, your email. If you have any guests that you want to include, you have 3 different options. But if you are specifying a nonprofit, I will definitely be, and you wanted to potentially meet virtually, I would be sharing my screen from the library. So you can meet in person, you can meet over Zoom. If you want to just have kind of an introductory phone call, we can't do much over the phone as far as like sharing resources, but I can learn more about what your needs are and how to point you in the right direction. So yeah, this is how to schedule a meeting. If you're not familiar with Calendly, 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And then I also have an email address that you can email me at right here, my first and last name at kclibrary.org. And let me resume that share.
And you are going to send us the link of this presentation,
yes.
right? Because
yes,
unfortunately, I was dropping in and out, so I would like to see the presentation. Thank you so much.
I will share to this playback as well as this presentation, and then how to actually schedule a meeting.
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your engagement, Jorge, and for joining and sharing more information about your nonprofit. For everybody else that is going to be watching playback, thank you for tuning in. And I hope that this information has been useful and helpful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.